We are broadcasting tonight from London ahead of the president's first official visit here in England. There's so much that is happening right here in Europe and at home, without a doubt. This is one of the busiest news cycles in years. We have a lot to cover tonight. We have a huge show. Newt Gingrich, Steve Bannon, right here in London, and much, much more. But first, earlier today, President Trump, he attended the annual NATO summit, where he had some very tough talk for European leaders, the ones who rely on your hard-earned taxpayer dollars to pay their national defense. Now, coming up tonight, we'll do something the media won't do. We will break down all of these numbers and explain why, under President Trump, America will no longer serve as the world's piggy bank. And also today, the president singled out the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, for what is her country's obscene dependence on Russian energy, and for the billions and billions of dollars flowing from Germany right into Vladimir Putin's pockets. And meanwhile, the mainstream media right here at home in America, once again spinning out of control. For months, they were just hysterical over the fake news narrative that Trump is Vladimir Putin's puppet. Well, guess what? Tonight, they're freaking out over Donald Trump's tough rhetoric against Russia. Wait a minute. I thought Putin had all these horrible things on President Trump, and he was compromised. We're going to reveal the blatant double standard, and we have important new developments tonight, shocking actually, surrounding Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and all their friends in the deep state. Sit tight. It is time for tonight's important breaking news London edition opening monologue. All right, for decades, the United States has been footing the bill for the safety and the security of the European continent, and all while many of our allies all across the Atlantic fail to live up to their commitments. Now, today in Brussels, President Trump made it perfectly clear the U.S. taxpayer is not and no longer going to be Europe's ATM machine. Take a look at this.
Many countries owe us a tremendous amount of money from many years back, where they're delinquent, as far as I'm concerned, because the United States has had to pay for them. So if you go back 10 or 20 years, you'll just add it all up. It's massive amounts of money is owed. Germany is just paying a little bit over 1%, whereas the United States, in actual numbers, is paying 4.2% of a much larger GDP. So I think that's inappropriate also. You know, we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting everybody, and yet we're paying a lot of money to protect. Now, this has been going on for decades. This has been brought up by other presidents, but other presidents never did anything about it because I don't think they understood it, or they just didn't want to get involved. But I have to bring it up because I think it's very unfair to our country. It's very unfair to our taxpayer. And I think that these countries have to step it up, not over a 10-year period. They have to step it up immediately.
Now, the president, he's absolutely right. And even the Secretary General of NATO is backing up President Trump. Let's take a look at this.
We are going to discuss many important issues at the summit. Among them is defense spending. And we all agree that we have to do more. I agree with you that we have to make sure that allies are investing more. The good news is that allies have started to invest more in defense. After years of cutting defense budgets, they have started to add billions to the defense budgets. And last year was the biggest increase in defense spending across Europe and Canada in a generation.
Why was that last year?
It's also because of your leadership, because your clear message.
Numbers don't lie, so let's do something the mainstream media would never do. We're going to break down those numbers. Now, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, it was first utilized as a unified military deterrent to the looming Soviet threat and to provide intercontinental stability throughout Western Europe and North America. It was formed after two world wars actually devastated the European continent. It took the lives of hundreds of thousands of American heroes. Now, NATO has a massive budget, around $1 trillion. Now, this year, the United States contributed over $700 billion to that budget. All right, let's compare that to the rest of our allies. The next highest contribution, well, that would come from the United Kingdom. They only contribute $61.5 billion. Germany, a mere $51 billion. Canada comes in, frankly, at an embarrassingly low $21 billion. And the country where NATO is headquartered, Belgium, they contribute only $5 billion. In fact, the United States, you, the American taxpayer, you're on the hook for 70% of NATO's expenses. Now, that's right. We pay 70 cents of every dollar that NATO spends. And while all NATO allies agreed to contribute at least 2% of their country's overall GDP to the NATO budget, the U.S. is only, get this, only one of 4 nations to actually follow through on that agreement and that standard. The United States actually contributes, well, almost double, 3.5% of our massive GDP to NATO's budget. And meanwhile, it's a much different story among our allies. Take a look at your screen. Economic powerhouse Germany, they only contribute 1.24%, not the 2%. And 3 Western European countries, well, they contribute less than even 1%. So that's right, one country, our country, we're proud of, the United States of America is now bearing the financial burden of NATO and the protection of Europe and North America, while 27 other countries sadly are laughing all the way to the bank. So tonight, under the president's leadership, America, he's putting them on notice, will no longer be the world's piggy bank, and our allies must pay their fair share. And of course, this includes the de facto leader of the EU, Germany. While one of Europe's wealthiest nations fails to properly fund NATO, get this, and the president pointed this out today, they're spending billions of dollars in Russia in order to support massive energy trade deals. In other words, Germany, they're not going to adequately fund the protection of their own country, but they're more than happy to prop up one of NATO's so-called biggest threats, the one they keep telling us about, the bad actor, Putin, in the bad country of Russia. And earlier today, the president called out the German chancellor, Angela Merkel, for her country's blatant double standard. It's about time. Take a look.
I think it's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. I think that's very inappropriate. And the former chancellor of Germany is the head of the pipeline company that's supplying the gas. Ultimately, Germany will have almost 70% of their country controlled by Russia with natural gas. So you tell me, is that appropriate? I mean, I've been complaining about this from the time I got in. It should have never been allowed to have happened. But Germany is totally controlled by Russia, because they were getting from 60 to 70% of their energy from Russia and a new pipeline. And you tell me if that's appropriate, because I think it's not. And I think it's a very bad thing for NATO, and I don't think it should have happened.
Now, Merkel responded with what was a vague, indirect, frankly pathetic statement lamenting the country's history under Soviet control. But now, how can someone possibly make the case that Donald Trump is compromised by Russia or Vladimir Putin? He actually is urging Merkel to get their energy from us, the United States of America, and by the way, end their dependence on Russia. Now, this is a move that would literally cripple Russia's fragile economy. And by the way, if Russia's economy falters, Vladimir Putin is finished. So much for all the media conspiracies, almost 2 years now, all the lies saying Donald Trump is compromised by Vladimir Putin. Now, imagine how many, just for a second, high-paying career jobs could be created in the United States of America if we would get those billions and billions of dollars and we were importing our natural gas to Germany, of which, by the way, we have an abundance of, more than we can use in hundreds of years. And as you might imagine, President Trump's, his tough talk in Brussels was met with absolute predictable hysteria from the mainstream media and, of course, their best friends in the Democratic Party. Now, after spending 18 months warning us all, the sky is falling because of the fake, phony narrative, the witch hunt, that Donald Trump was somehow Vladimir Putin's puppet. The left is now in a total freak-out mode that Donald Trump today used a lot of anti-Russia rhetoric and demanding that countries pay their fair share. And by the way, that's supposed to lead us now to catastrophe. You can't win with these people. In other words, a typical Trump-hating day in the media with their Democratic allies. And as always, we've got all the tape to prove it. Take a look.
It's a ludicrous demand that he's making here.
The EU was meant to get around and away from that toxic nationalism, right? But who's bringing it back? Donald Trump. America First is toxic nationalism.
It is
unprecedented language. It is a real threat to the alliance. It's a threat to the democratic, liberal, post-war world order that Harry Truman himself signed into being with the NATO declaration 70 years ago.
Frankly, it's just infuriating to watch this happen. You cannot imagine any American president all the way back 75 years deciding to become the critic-in-chief of NATO. I mean, it's Orwellian. It's infuriating to see this happen. It's diplomatic malpractice.
And there's a lot more. All right, so think of it this way. You have the leaders of the Democratic Party. Well, they have no vision for the country. You got Nancy Pelosi, Chucky Schumer. Now, remember, their agenda for 2018 is very, very simple. Oh, they want their crumbs back. They want to impeach Trump, but don't say it. They want open borders. They want to keep Obamacare, and they don't want Judge Kavanaugh on the bench or any Trump choice. Anyway, they released a joint statement, bashing Trump and said, quote, President Trump's brazen insults and denigration of America's most steadfast allies, Germany, is an embarrassment. His behavior this morning is another profoundly disturbing signal that the president is more loyal to Russian President Vladimir Putin than to our NATO allies. Actually, just the opposite is true. So, okay, what are Pelosi and Schumer? What are they afraid of Putin? Why do they want to make Russia rich again? Why? So the American taxpayers, all of you are footing the bill for over 70% of NATO? Liberals, by the way, they are so generous with your money. And by the way, why don't they encourage Germany to buy our natural gas, like the president is? It's important to remember, this is all coming from America's so-called elites, the very same people who think they know best. The same people who think giving billions of dollars to Iran and the mullahs in Iran, that was a wonderful idea. It's going to bring us peace in our time. The same people who thought bribing North Korea, as Bill Clinton tried in the 1990s, would prevent them from building nuclear weapons. Didn't work out that way. The same people who actually cringe at the thought of America again leading on the world stage. And the same people who sadly, but routinely, look down on you, us, we, the American people. Remember, you're the irredeemable deplorables. You're the ones that cling to your God, your guns, your Bible, your religion. Yeah, those same people. Take a look.
You go into some of these small towns in Pennsylvania, like a lot of small towns in the Midwest. Yeah, the jobs have been gone now for 25 years and nothing's replaced it. And they've gone through the Clinton administration and the Bush administration, and each successive administration has said that somehow these communities are going to regenerate, and they have not. So it's not surprising then that they get bitter and they cling to guns or religion or antipathy towards people who aren't like them.
You know, to just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
Same playbook. We'll see it all throughout this election year. Judge Kavanaugh and his family will experience. Nothing changes. They don't have any vision to make the country better. Now, in 2016, Peter Strzok texted that he could actually smell Trump voters in a rural Virginia Walmart. He can smell us. I like Walmart. And just yesterday, well, you have MSNBC conspiracy anchor thrill up his leg, Chris Matthews, comparing Trump supporters, believe it or not, taking it a step further. Untamed dogs. You don't believe me? Let's take a look.
He's taking a Republican Party, a grassroots party that spent 60, 70 years leading the war in the Cold War, hating the Russians for their aggressiveness in the world and taking over countries on their border and being tyrannical the way they are now. And he has those people cheering against Western Europe, which is liberal and democratic and free market, and attacking them while saying how Trump, agreeing with Trump, says he's doing his best.
It's remarkable to think that one of the
way he's dog training these people.
Oh, that's what they really think of us. Now, these same elites in the media, they're celebrating the widespread anti-Trump protests that are going to be taking place this week throughout Europe. One of the reasons we're here, and as we discussed last night, they're all forgetting, you know, history does repeat itself. Remember Ronald Reagan? President Reagan faced the same backlash, same demonstrations before his policy of peace through strength, trust but verify, the evil empire, tear down this wall, which spurred some of the most historic diplomatic achievements in world history. President Trump could now be poised to follow in those footsteps. We could all hope. And we'll have more on the president's trip throughout Europe, throughout the show. But we do have other important breaking news on the domestic front. Trump-hating former FBI lawyer Lisa Page today did not comply with her subpoena and flat out refused to testify before a closed-door session of Congress. She sounds a little like Hillary. And earlier today, the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Bob Goodlatte, he voiced this very important concern. Let's take a look at this.
It does appear that Lisa Page apparently has something to hide. She has been in complete defiance of cooperation with the House Judiciary Committee and the Oversight and Government Reform Committee for 7 months now, dating back to the first letter we wrote to the Department of Justice in December of last year asking for her appearance. There have been 2 subsequent letters and 2 subpoenas issued for her appearance, and she has defied all of that. Now, when she says that she has not had ample time to prepare, that is belied by
the president also reacted today. He tweeted out, quote, ex-FBI lawyer Lisa Page today defied a House of Representatives and issued subpoena to testify before Congress. Wow. But is anybody really surprised? Together with her lover, FBI agent Peter Strzok, she worked on the rigged witch hunt, perhaps the most tainted and corrupt case ever. Yeah, the media ignores that. Now the window is fast closing for Lisa Page. She must either comply with the subpoena, by the way, if this happened to us, we'd be in big trouble, or she will face serious legal consequences, including a contempt of Congress citation. And meanwhile, her corrupt FBI boyfriend, Peter Strzok, well, he's still set to testify in public tomorrow. Get ready. This hearing is going to be explosive. We will have full analysis and reaction to Peter Strzok's time in the hot seat tomorrow if he shows up. Catherine Herridge will also join us live with the report on the very latest on all of this tonight. But first, joining us by phone, he is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Trump's America, The Truth About Our Nation's Great Comeback, broken into 2 parts, one about the success the media never talks about, and the other, well, roadblocks and difficulties and challenges the president will face. Fox News contributor Newt Gingrich, I just laid out all the numbers, Mr. Speaker. 70%. We pay 3.5% of our massive GDP. Germany, what, 1.4%. And they're giving billions of dollars in contracts to Vladimir Putin, 70% of the lifeblood of their economy, their energy coming from Russia. And I'm sitting here thinking, isn't part of NATO to prevent against any type of Russian military challenge they might face? Why wouldn't they give the business to us?
Well, let me say, first of all, because I was so struck when you played the section from Hillary that it just reminded me, can you imagine if she'd been president and we'd have had to listen to that for the last 2 years? I mean, that's a level of pain I can't quite imagine. So I just want to just say, I couldn't stop thinking about that after you played her quote. And, of course, the president has put his finger on one of the great false hypocrisies of the Europeans. The Europeans love to lecture us while they make money. The German economy is the strongest economy in Europe. It is an enormous machine of export. They love deals. The reason they were for the Iranian deal is they want to sell things to Iran. They lecture us about not being tough with Putin. Well, as the president correctly points out, they're spending billions every year buying natural gas from Russia. I mean, the level of hypocrisy is just breathtaking. And I think the president deserves a lot of credit. This may have been one of the most honest days of public dialogue about the future of U.S. and Europe that I've ever seen. And at every stage, he was prepared. And by the way, people should remember, as you watch him, he's not reading off of some staff-driven memo. He is talking off the cuff because he actually knows all this stuff. And he has learned and he has thought about it. And I thought that he was very impressive today. And, of course, the Europeans naturally are kind of irritated because they've had a great ride now for 3 or 4 decades. And we're now, it's like having a brother-in-law who you loaned your car to for free for 25 years, and now you want the car back, and they're going, but I like the car. And the Europeans are all of a sudden being asked to grow up and to do their fair share. And as I mentioned to you earlier on your radio show, this amazing ad that was in the London Times by 9 senior British generals and admirals that said Trump is exactly right about NATO. and they list 8 major reforms of the British military. It's the most amazing thing I've seen in a long time, and is a sign that he is striking a nerve with people who care about national security and people who care about safety.
You know, I love how generous the left and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are with the American taxpayers' money. America, obviously the president doesn't mind paying his fair share, nor do I think any American minds paying our fair share. But we're paying 70% plus of the bill. And what I don't know is, why would Germany allow itself, if you're going to make billions of dollars in energy deals with Vladimir Putin, why would you create this vulnerability, considering everybody views him as a hostile actor and need to protect ourselves against him, and NATO's spending $1 billion a year, most of which we're paying? Why wouldn't they partner with America, considering our vast natural gas resources, the jobs that could be created for Americans?
Don't underestimate the degree of resentment. I always remind people, when we are celebrating D-Day and the landing at Normandy, that there are a fair number of Germans who aren't quite as excited by it. There's a long tradition of the Germans and the Russians working together in between wars, and I think that there's a comfort zone. And remember that a substantial part of Germany was in the Soviet Empire and consisted of people who were used to dealing with the Russians.
Imagine Donald Trump, if he could persuade Germany to do this, would literally shut down Russia's economy. If I'm Vladimir Putin, I would be very nervous. All right, Mr. Speaker, thank you. All right, when we come back, as we continue from London, right here in our London studio, Steve Bannon will join us straight ahead. All right, as I mentioned earlier in my opening monologue, as we continue from London tonight, the media cannot stand it that President Trump actually stood up for America today on the world stage. Just to remind you, let's take a quick look.
This is, you know,
okay,
and again,
fine.
And I don't want to make light of this, but this kind of diplomacy looks like Hulk smash.
Call Germany a captive of Russia is the most inflammatory language I can imagine.
It's the latest example of how the Trump doctrine includes driving a wedge in the world order by upending Democratic-led institutions in place since after World War II.
I think he went there determined to poke his allies and to demand not only more spending, but to insult Germany.
What's going on here? Is there any possible reason to believe this is good for the world?
All right, joining us now here in London with reaction, former White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon. How are you, my friend? Good to see you.
Thanks for having me here. Live in London.
Live in London,
in the middle
yes,
of the night.
Sir. What is it, 2:30 in the morning?
Or middle of the night.
Something like that. All right, let's go. Today was historic.
Yes.
It was the right thing to do, pitch perfect, and I don't think anybody ever laid out those numbers.
And Sean, look at the meltdown on the mainstream media and the permanent political class of both parties. The never-Trumper national security apparatus, right, and also the left. You know, they have said for years how disruptive Trump is. Here's what he did. Think about the speech he made in Warsaw last August. He said, our #1 priority is defense of Western civilization. And he actually talked at that time about what a problem Russian natural gas was going to be. I mean, for any other president been so provocative. He goes to NATO today, and he has a partners discussion to say, look, this alliance, I'm trying to make it stronger. I want allies. I don't want a protectorate. The problem is what NATO's turned into is a protectorate. You can see it in those numbers.
Numbers are astonishing.
It's not just, for the American people to understand, it's not just that Germany's only paying 1.2% of their GDP when they're positive in their, they're positive in their budget. They got plenty of cash. It's only 1.2%. But if you look at where they're spending it on, it's not on equipment. It's not on readiness. It's not on interoperability for NATO. There was a report out the other day that 128, I think, German combat aircraft, only seven are prepared to be fully operational right now. What President Trump said today is that, hey, the key of the Trump doctrine, no more managed decline. The elites in the world manage process to unacceptable outcomes to citizens. And he's saying, hey, we're not doing that anymore. I'm going to have a partners discussion. You need to pay the 2%. In fact, he said, instead of waiting to 2024, if you look at what the threats are today, you need to step up and pay today. And by the way, if you don't pay it, you should be in arrears. And all the guys who said,
I agree with that.
Trump is not engaged. Trump's an isolationist. This is what are you talking about? This is total engagement and treating people like adults. Everybody comes over to NATO before, or to Europe, and they have all this highfalutin talk.
But they only like apology tours, Steve. They only like a weak America. They only like billions sent to Iran.
But even people on the Republican side have come over here and just had platitudes. Right. Trump is a practical, pragmatic businessman, and he's saying if we're to make this alliance work, people have to step up, okay, and participate, fully participate as far as the 2% go, and it can't be 10 years, it's got to be today. I think, and this is one of the things that Trump drove, President Trump, remember, did $30 billion increase when we first got there just for readiness. And today, after these things in the morning, they had the readiness briefings. I believe President Trump came out and said, hey, I think they ought to think about 4%. He is into the details of what it takes to make this alliance work. But you look on to the mainstream media and it's in full meltdown. This is the first time anybody's had a part in this discussion.
Poland is doing the opposite of Germany. They refuse to be dependent on Russian energy sources. When you talk about Germany, literally, if Putin's a hostile regime, Russia is a hostile regime, or Putin a hostile actor, and you're going to put 70% of the lifeblood of your economy in his hands and give them billions of dollars, and NATO in part is designed to protect against any hostile regime like Russia, it just defies all common sense and logic, especially knowing the depth of American resources with energy.
That's what he said today. He said, how can you be so lax in supporting NATO, the defense alliance? And what we're here today is talk about that, when you're putting really the control of your entire country. Because if you fully do this natural gas, you'll be at 70%. And look back, what is it, 2009? 2009 when Russia put the pressure on Ukraine about natural gas? People have seen before what Russia do. Like I said, he talked about it in Warsaw last year. He brought it up today, and nobody has really gotten in the Russians' faces like this. I mean, he called out Germany, but he also called out Russia. So I don't know what we're seeing
today. How nervous? You did not like what you heard. He's basically saying, don't do this. I think that kills the Russian economy.
I think if you're Putin, you're sitting there going, hey, this guy is the leader of the West. He's laying out very methodically what it takes for the defense of the West, that they have to have an alliance that works. They have to have an alliance that works militarily. They can't be any more games. You know, President Trump's got a great saying, no more games. And today he said, no more games. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to pay for it. And by the way, you can't, if you're beholden to Russia, you're strategically going to put the entire alliance in jeopardy.
Okay, let me switch to the 2018 election. I make the point that the Democrat, there's no vision to look out for the working man, or we said the forgotten men and women of this country. This is their agenda. They want to impeach Trump, but they're telling Maxine Waters and others, don't say it. They want to open borders. They want to keep Obamacare. They don't want Judge Kavanaugh on the bench, and they want their crumbs back. They want the tax cut back. I can't think of one positive thing they're offering. But historically, midterms are difficult for the party in power in the White House.
It's difficult in party in power, but this is going to be a referendum on President Trump. I keep saying this is his first reelect, and it should be. They're running away from saying impeachment now because they understand impeachment galvanizes the deplorables. It galvanizes the base. President Trump is going to be in the ballot.
So you're calling us all deplorables?
Absolutely. I wear there's a badge of honor.
Irredeemable deplorable.
I wear there's a badge of honor.
I do too.
That's a high. September 9th is a high holy day in our movement because you saw in that clip.
It's horrible.
What she really thinks of working people. They detest you. They detest your values. They detest what you stand for. And that's what Trump speaks to the American people. President Trump, this is his reelect, okay? You're going to get an up or down vote. By the way, you're going to get the whole package. What he's done on national security.
What about weak Republicans? What about rhinos? They're going to have to suck it up?
Well, it's just like 2016 when President Trump talked about the judges. Right? If you're a establishment Republican, okay, and you see what President Trump represents with tax cuts, where the economy's going, right, with national security, all the leadership he's shown, and he is reforming the federal judiciary. It's one of the reasons they're having a meltdown right now. Because the left understands that Donald Trump is a historic president, and he's going to be in their lives for 30 or 40 years.
By the way, transformation.
Transformation, but in one of the true historic presidents, maybe 4 or 5 in American history, he's going to be in the lives of the progressive left for 30 or 40 years. The way he's redoing the federal judiciary in a very methodical process, right, to go to people who have a lot of written opinions, to go to originalists for the Constitution, it's going to have dramatic impact. I think that's why you've seen the meltdown.
You're confident Kavanaugh's a originalist?
I think Kavanaugh is a tremendous pick. Trust the process. I think he's a tremendous pick.
Great to see you in London.
Great.
Good to see you. All right, as we continue from London, we have breaking news. Catherine Herridge joins us with new developments on anti-Trump. FBI officials struck in Page, and then Sarah Carter. Greg Jarrett, as we continue. It's almost 2:40 in London a.m. We'll see you. We'll continue. We are reporting live from London, and it's going to be a very big day on Capitol Hill tomorrow as FBI agent Peter Strzok will testify publicly before the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees about his anti-Trump bias. And also tonight, new developments concerning Strzok's former mistress, Lisa Page, and how she today defied a congressional subpoena. Joining us now with much more is from Washington, Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent, our friend Catherine Herridge. Catherine, a lot of breaking news on this tonight.
Well, that's right, Sean, and good evening. Two congressional panels sent this letter laying out three options. FBI lawyer Lisa Page can show up tomorrow at a public hearing with her former lover and colleague Agent Peter Strzok, give a closed-door deposition, or face more legal trouble. The committees are warning tonight they could initiate contempt proceedings as early as Friday morning.
She has been in complete defiance of cooperation with the House Judiciary Committee and the Oversight and Government Reform Committee for 7 months now. I think it's very important for her to understand that, and she should comply with it, and she should comply with it now before she's held in contempt of Congress, which could happen as soon as Friday.
Short time ago on Twitter, President Trump emphasized Page has defied a House subpoena by not showing up today on Capitol Hill. Quote, wow, but is anybody really surprised? This afternoon, Page's legal team released a new photo of their client and said the FBI shares some of the blame, accusing the Bureau of failing to provide timely access to Page's notes and records. Her lawyer telling Fox News there is no basis for claims that Lisa has anything to hide or is unwilling to testify, then accusing the House panels of bullying tactics. The committee chairman countered they had to call in federal officers because Page and her team played games.
In addition, our attorneys have had communications with her attorney for nearly a month now about this appearance, and her attorney agreed to accept service of the subpoena and then turned around and immediately tried to reject it. So that's why we sent the marshals to her house to serve the subpoena. They had to go back 3 times before they finally were able to reach her.
Situation tonight remains highly fluid. A legal source close to FBI agent Peter Strzok tells Fox News that he still plans to appear tomorrow on Capitol Hill, and his team wants the transcript from his closed-door deposition 2 weeks ago made public as well, Sean.
All right, Catherine Herridge in Washington here with reaction. The author, it's less than 2 weeks away. The definitive book on this whole scheme, the Russia hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, and yes, frame Donald Trump. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett also here on set with us in London. Fox News contributor, investigative reporter Sarah Carter. This is interesting because she either appears with Peter Strzok or appears Friday or will be held in contempt.
That's right, and it's very revealing, all the information that we've received today about Lisa Page, right? The fact that the marshals had to go to her house, the fact that they three times that she was trying to evade the marshals, apparently, and finally they got her, and then now she's just refusing. You know, there's a different set of rules, apparently, for Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, and Hillary Clinton, and for all these players that were involved in this. A different set of rules that we would not be allowed to get away with. I think what's really fascinating here is they could push for contempt, but remember, even with Eric Holder, I mean, he was in contempt, but nothing ever really happened. The American people are frustrated, Sean. They want to see some action, so she either comes tomorrow, which I think is the best option, and testifies with Peter Strzok, or Friday and behind closed doors.
Let's go to the point, Greg, that Sarah's making here. I would no sooner defy a congressional subpoena. It wouldn't work out well for me, and it wouldn't work out well for anybody watching this program. It wouldn't work out well if subpoenaed emails were deleted and BleachBit and devices beaten up with hammers and SIM cards removed. Why? How are they getting away with it? And Congress, what are they going to do? They will have no power if they don't enforce this contempt.
If you and I did this, we'd be doing push-ups in the Hooskow because there would have been a bench warrant for our arrest, and only thereafter would there be a show cause hearing. But this is Washington, D.C., and Congress has no power to enforce a contempt citation or a subpoena. They have to go to a federal judge, and in D.C., they're all liberal judges. So, you know, it's a different set of operating procedures there. But she is claiming she needs to review documents. That's not a valid legal excuse for defying a subpoena. I used to issue subpoenas all the time before witnesses had a chance to look at documents because I wanted them to tell the truth and not be influenced by documents and conform their testimony. And then I wanted to use those documents to impeach their credibility when they lied. So she's reversed the entire process. How does it end? She gets away with it. History shows this. Congressional contempt citations go nowhere. Ask Eric Holder.
We don't have a country. We don't have rule of law. We don't have equal application. We don't have a constitution if we have two justice systems here.
That's right. And this is what the American people are saying over and over again, Sean. This is why people don't believe in Robert Mueller's special counsel investigation anymore. This is the reason we're hearing more voices speaking out and the tide is shifting. But something needs to be done. Either the Department of Justice, it needs to be restructured. Something needs to happen. They need to actually implement and enforce the law. Where are the prosecutors that the Attorney General put in charge? Where are the where is the president
spending 23 hours over a 2005 tax case in isolation.
That's right, but the president has the power, Sean. The president can declassify or get these documents over to Congress.
You agree with that, Greg? The president has the power to declassify and demand all of this, correct?
He can, and he can order the Department of Justice and the FBI to comply with lawful subpoenas. Failure to do so is grounds for termination. You're fired.
All right, guys. Greg's book in less than 2 weeks. Hannity.com, Amazon.com. Sarah, thank you for joining us. When we come back, the most outrageous conspiracy theory that crazy NBC has now peddled about Donald Trump and Russia. Sebastian Gorka, Daniel Hoffman. That's straight ahead. All right, the Trump left-wing media is no longer content with just attacking the president. Now they are stooping to really insane conspiracy theories. What do I mean? Take a look.
Does Russia have some kind of leverage over Donald Trump? In a new cover story from New York Magazine, writer Jonathan Chait argues we have not allowed ourselves to consider the full range of possibilities. Chait lays out what could be considered the worst-case scenario for Trump-Russia collusion, that Donald Trump has been a Russian intelligence asset since 1987.
1987 is when he went to Moscow and he's feted by the Russians and tours Moscow. And then he comes back. Then he starts talking about running for president for the first time. And then he starts talking for the first time about how our allies are a bunch of freeloaders and we should kick them to the curb. So it really dovetails with Russian foreign policy interests then and now. Now, again, that's probably a coincidence, but it might not be.
Okay, a Russian asset. Okay, now these bizarre conspiracy theories even extend to Trump's Supreme Court nomination. Again, back to, yes, NBC News, Tom Brokaw, are you proud? Reporter had to delete this tweet claiming the president and Justice Kennedy had conspired to select Judge Brett Kavanaugh. Joining us now, the author of the book, Why We Fight, Fox News national security strategist, Dr. Gorka, and Fox News contributor Daniel Hoffman. Dr. Gorka, it's really simple. Okay, he was an asset since 1987. Now we figured it out. But today he basically was telling Germany, don't rely on Russia, which if they didn't, would tank Putin's economy in a year.
Sean, I can play their game too. So all the people you showed, all the staff members at the New York Post, New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, I don't have any evidence, but I think they're lizard men from another dimension. It might be true. I don't have any evidence. This is journalism today. They're like cornered, rabid rats. They've been selling us lies for so many years that now they can't go any further except to double down. Because if they did anything else, they'd have to admit to us. But they'd have to admit to us that they've been lying. So they just invent new stuff.
Daniel Hoffman, this is your business. This is what you have done, including Russia, as working as a CIA operative. I don't even know what to say about this. It's basically everything they say, you just can't trust any of it anymore. Dr. Gorka's right. It's all lies. It's all agenda-driven.
Sean, this started with John Brennan, who did a great disservice to the national debate on national security by openly speculating without evidence that Vladimir Putin could blackmail the president. Now, Brennan later retracted his speculation, but the damage was done. And Brennan should have known, really, that he speculates at his own peril. And if he had something to say, he could have gone to the special counsel. But he really framed the debate, and that's what's of greatest concern to me, was just his absolutely unprofessional and very partisan behavior.
It's even actually worse than that. I mean, and I'm not even joking. I mean, Tom Brokaw spent his life, and I don't think he agrees with Sean Hannity, but people like Tim Russert, this is not NBC News anymore, Dr. Gorka. This is a whole new entity, which is basically innuendo, conspiracy theories, outright lies, fake news, and an agenda to destroy the president, delegitimize him, and it's been going on for 2 years.